Welcome back to the Mortgage Note podcast. My name is Nicole Murray. A lot to discuss, with the biggest topic being the National Association of Realtors' $418 million settlement. Now that some time has gone by, the dust has started to settle. We are going to hear from real estate industry professionals about what is happening on the ground. Are consumers aware? How has it changed business? But to start, can you believe it? We are still talking about the COVID-19 pandemic when it comes to the state of the real estate market. Joining me, Associate Professor of Economics at the University of New Haven in West Haven, Connecticut, Patrick Gourley. Patrick, if you can give me an idea how the pandemic that occurred more than 4 years ago is still having an effect.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of different things kind of get lumped together into being the COVID-19 pandemic. Really, though, when you want to look at the U.S. real estate market, what's happened is not the result so much as COVID itself, but of the government response, right? You had around $5 trillion pumped into the economy in 2020 and 2021. That then caused inflation. Then because of the inflation, you had a rise in rates, interest rates. And so that's really kind of driven, I think, a lot of this boom in the housing market. People had a lot of money. And then once inflation took off, I think a lot of people realized, wait, rates are about to go up. We should buy housing now. They did. That drove up the price of housing. And then as rates did come out, that doesn't drive up, the sales price of a house, but makes mortgage payments more expensive. So I think housing prices, I hope they go down, even though it would hurt me just because I think things are getting too unaffordable. I just don't think it's going to happen.
So a big part of this conversation is interest rates. Do you think they will get cut this year?
I think there's a decent chance they get cut this year, but it's not going to be by the amount that the markets were forecasting 6 months ago. This is never going to happen. I would actually be in favor of a quarter point increase at this point, just to really show the markets that the Fed is serious of getting down to their 2% target, but that isn't going to happen. I think that they'll keep them level, at least for the foreseeable future.
Should people wait for rates to be lowered before they buy?
I don't think people should wait to buy. I think that a year from now, 2 years from now, the rates are not going to be significantly different than they are today. If they are, you can always refinance. The financial status, of course, is not the only thing you think about when buying a house. It's, do you want a home versus do you want to rent? So if you're someone who wants to own and have your own property, then by all means buy today. And if you enjoy renting, then you can stay renting. I've never been a big fan of this idea that if you're renting, you're throwing your money away or anything like that.
Wait, you are the first person I have ever heard say that. Can you explain how you are not throwing away your money if you are renting?
Oh, you're definitely not. As an economist, that's a totally incoherent and wrong take. You're paying money for some place to live. It's an exchange for goods and services. You're not throwing your money away any more than if you buy your own vegetables instead of growing your own in the backyard.
Thank you for that. I am sure there are a lot of people out there who needed to hear that. But now we are going to pivot towards the settlement everyone is talking about, the $418 million agreement with the National Association of Realtors. There are a few major changes to be aware of. Number one, buyer's agents' commissions cannot be posted on the MLS. Number two, sellers will not be required to offer buyer's agents commissions. And number three, buyers will need to sign agent agreements before working together. We'll be hearing from Jules Sapphire, a real estate professional at the Pantiga Group, Shant Banosian, Executive Vice President of Sales at Guaranteed Rate in Waltham, Massachusetts, Gabriella Lisi, a Realtor Associate at Remax Revolution in New Jersey, and Rob Johnson, broker and owner of the Rob Johnson Company in Las Vegas. Now that it has been a few months, there's been some time for the dust to settle. What is the biggest takeaway from all this? Gabriella?
Commission is negotiable and always has been.
I think it's a positive thing, right? Like, I think in the sense that it's positive because the home buyers and home sellers are going to have more transparency around the services they receive and the commissions they pay.
What are you seeing thus far with customers? Do they know what's going on?
I do have some customers who do have questions. They're not many. Their concern is more, hey, how does this affect me? For the most part, it does seem like business as usual.
I have not seen a real material impact yet. For the most part, I would say it's very much business as usual in the sense that, like, it doesn't feel any different to me than it did last spring or the spring before that in terms of what I'm talking to clients about, truthfully.
No difference yet. There's definitely clients that have questions, and I'm starting to put more of it out there in terms of the material and marketing that we do to try and help create some awareness about what's going on. Most of the people I've talked with really just don't understand any of it or why it's even happening. The main question I think I get is why? Why is this changing? What is the point of all this?
Moving forward, buyer's agreements will be mandatory. Do you think it's a good idea, and have you been using them?
A positive thing, buyers agents are going to make sure, and they're going to have to, I believe, they're going to have to get buyer representation agreements signed by their client buyers. And included in that agreement will be some sort of condition of how much they expect to be paid. I feel there's commitment now on the buyer's end, to stick with their agent. What happens a lot is a buyer would walk away. It stops all the certain individuals who are out there using 25 different agents at one time to try and find the property.
Okay. And to the other agents?
On the back end, the buyer agency agreement, which is one of the things that are supposed to be changing, it gets a little bit more in detail, which I think is great because it makes everything more transparent. What is the responsibility of the realtor? What is the responsibility of the buyer? I've actually started using it already. We put a lot of time in, and I think that this is a great tool to have them understand this is what we're providing for you, so we expect the loyalty back. I haven't had any pushback.
So I'm using the buyer representation agreement, and a lot of the buyers that I've been working with understand why. They have no problem with it. For the most part, people understand they need representation out there when it comes to buying something that's $250,000, $500,000, $1 million. This is real serious stuff.
Jules, you pointed out a flaw with this system involving the buyer's agent's agreements, that it still needs to be addressed. Can you explain?
If I'm getting a buyer's representation agreement with buyer A, and that same buyer goes down the road and signs another buyer's representation agreement with another agency, who takes precedence here? Who's entitled to this commission? There has to be some sort of way to track who signed with who, when they signed, who's going to enforce it.
So one of the other major changes with this settlement is that sellers will have the option to not offer buyer's agents commission. Let's start with, who do we think this will affect the most?
Affecting most, I would say, is your first-time home buyers. A lot of the times they're putting 3.5% down because they don't have a ton of money saved yet. They don't have equity from another house. Let's say now a seller is not offering a commission to the buyer's agent anymore. Then I have to explain to the buyer, okay, well, this house, you would have to pay my commission on this one. So, and that could be a pretty penny. $10,000 could be a big difference to a FHA.
Now, on the luxury side of things, the higher end homes, those buyers probably have more cash to deal with or to spend. A lot of other folks are already busy coming up with down payment, closing costs, moving, new furniture. And now if it's a $700,000 house, that's going to be an extra $14,000 to $21,000 fee on top of it. So that's not going to go over well.
I think those buyers that are really on that budget and only have but so much available to them, those are the ones that are going to be suffering the most from this whole thing.
Okay, and once they have the option, should sellers offer commission? What do you think? Jules, let's start with you.
There are going to be some sellers who choose not to. Most sellers, I believe, will continue to offer incentive to buyer's agents, making it very clear, hey, we still want to offer buyer's agents commission. We want as much exposure as possible. Please bring your buyers to us. We will pay you.
It's definitely still in the seller's best interest to continue, because if you got to look at it in the whole context of things, it's easy for the sellers to be like, oh, well, great, I'm just not going to offer this and I'm going to, quote, save money. But you got to remember, on the other side is now these agents now have to get an agreement with their buyer before they show your home. And that buyer might not be willing to pay their agent that much money, which is therefore they'll only look at homes that have a commission. Then that 0% might just not get looked at. If you're motivated to sell your home for the best price in the shortest amount of time possible, like offering a commission is going to be the best way to get there.
I do believe that they should. I think that if the sellers start deciding not to pay a buyer's agent, I think they're going to have a harder time selling their home, especially in that market where there's FHA and, first-time home buyers. Because if you have one house that is offering to pay your buyer's commission, and then you have house B that is saying, I'm not offering. Now, let's say my buyer likes both houses. I have to explain to them, this one's going to cost you this much more because they're not offering commissions. That's definitely going to help determine which house they want to move forward with.
Ultimately, like when you want to sell a house, in my opinion, you want to attract the biggest buyer pool. And there's just some people that don't have the funds to cover down payment, closing costs, and on top of that, another 2.5% buyer agency. So now they're not going to look at that property because they're not going to come out of pocket, or they're not going to seriously consider that property. And ultimately, all you're doing as a seller is you're eliminating people from the buyer pool. So by refusing to pay buyer agency from a seller perspective, I just think that it's short-sighted and ultimately will lead to your asset being less valuable, even in a market like this.
If sellers don't offer the commission, are there any solutions being discussed that could help the first-time home buyer or FHA?
You can finance it in. I believe the lenders are starting to make adjustments so that there can be concession from the seller. Perhaps the buyer can finance our commission into their loan. The issue is they already have seller concessions for inspection issues, closing costs. So there's only a limit to the percentage of your loan that you can have a concession on. So they're kind of just making sure that this can be something that's financed in addition to those other issues.
Shant, how does this change things from the lender's point of view?
Ultimately, what I've noticed that has to happen on our part, because it's our responsibility, is a part of the pre-approval, we have to document where the source of funds are coming from for the transaction, right? So it's my responsibility to make sure my buyers, when they're pre-approved and getting financing, we know where their down payment money is coming from, where their closing costs are coming from, for legal fees, everything, tax bills, insurance bills. And now we have to bring up the face that if you're required to pay your buyer agency commission, we have to document where that's going to come from. So we are talking to people like in cases where the seller refuses to pay buyer agency, we have to educate them on two parts. One, either you're going to have to pay that out of pocket, or two, you can negotiate as a part of the transaction for that to be financed into the deal as a interested party contribution, right? So you can negotiate the price up and ask for a credit back from the seller to cover these things.
Now, usually with change comes people who try and find a way around the change. Have we heard of any loopholes circulating throughout the industry in regards to commissions no longer being listed on the MLS?
Rules is supposed to be that you can't advertise it on the MLS website. So you just have to reach out to the seller's agent directly and ask them. There's been a few ways that some agents are trying to work around it. I believe one of the things that they're trying to work out is there going to be a third-party app that can advertise the commission?
Rob, I know you said you heard something different. Can you go into more detail?
One of the other rules I saw in a new email the other day is that you can't give any of this commission information to any sort of third-party aggregator, meaning there can't be a website like Zillow or Realtor.com that helps agents get all the info for the commissions because the MLS does not have it. From what I could tell, I could choose to put these commissions on my website and show them. But then again, is that good for my clients? Is that not good for my clients? Is it better to have a conversation? Because some sellers might say, oh, I want to pay zero, but they can ask for commission, or we can try and negotiate that.
What type of changes do we predict specifically agent to agent in the industry?
I think in the middle, you could see a lot of agents that were making 200 grand a year. Maybe now they only make 150 or even less.
We're hoping that, as agents in our industry, that we're all on the same page. I think if some agents try to undercut or take listings just to take them, even though they're not paying agents, I think not much will change. It's just the way it's addressed. Will there be some agents coming in and saying, oh, I'll do it for 1%? Maybe, but what do you get what you pay for?
That interaction with a lot of agents coming to open houses and who shows property when, and can I send my buyer? I'm over in this county. I'm not sure if people are going to still play nice with things like that. I would imagine they will, because they want as much exposure as possible.
A few of you have predicted a change with the real estate industry overall. What do you mean by that?
I definitely see agents getting out of the business for sure. On some level, isn't a bad thing. The barrier to entry is too low, and then the standards that are required are kind of non-existent. I mean, they're going to be on the buy side, plenty of agents that are just not equipped to get buyers to sign these things. It might be difficult for most agents to get these sort of agreements signed, because this is going to become a shock to buyers.
For the people that don't do this full time, right? Because there's a lot of part-time real estate agents, right? And a lot of them have other jobs. It does, in my opinion, this does make the barrier to entry and to getting into real estate's been pretty low for a long time. I think those people that aren't going to be able to change their business, understand the new compliance, understand the new legalities, and then do a really good job of articulating it and spending time on it, are probably not going to be doing this for very much longer. There's two kinds of agents, right? There's the ones that have been doing it forever and totally like do a really great job of articulating the amazing value they provide to their clients. And there's the people that do a really amazing job, but have never had to communicate it to anybody or have never had somebody sign a contract. And I'm noticing that the ones that are really committed to being great real estate agents are, learning how to really do a great job communicating, setting expectations, and articulating the value proposition. And then the ones that aren't willing to do it or don't want to do it, unfortunately, are going to have a really difficult time, in my opinion, succeeding in the real estate business, especially if they want to work with buyers.
Are there any positives for this predicted condensing of the real estate industry?
What will be good about that is that the buyers and the sellers are going to be working with the standard of excellence and the standard of professionalism is going to go up. And I think so ultimately consumers are going to have a better experience.
What if buyers try to go at things on their own to save money? Is that plausible? Is it a good idea?
Most buyers think they don't need an agent because they can find homes themselves. I think where agents really earn their money is helping them figure out which ones are the lemons, negotiating the pricing, negotiating the repairs and the due diligence, and just having the experience to get them through this deal in a timely fashion.
Think about the transaction that we're talking about. It's life's biggest purchase, right? 70% of the net worth of the average American is in their real estate holdings, right? So these are like very important decisions they're making. And to do that without representation, to me, is like the thought of even doing it without representation is mind blowing. Every time I've ever bought a piece of real estate, I've used a real estate agent, right? And I'm in this business. I've closed 40,000 real estate transactions myself, and I need their help.
There's a few that are wondering, okay, well, what if I just go to the seller's agent? They'll be a dual agent and they'll only make half. Well, I don't know how many people want to work for free. You're doing double the job for half the commission. When you're also with a dual agent, you don't have 100% loyalty. That agent has to work for both of you. To have your own buyer's agent that's there 100% for you and for your best interest is really the way to go.
A buyer's agent is going to look at a buyer's preferences for where they want to live in terms of everything from a school system to density of population, to the property types, prices, of course, taxes. All those things get thrown into it. Not that they're not looking at it directly, the buyers. A lot of agents have more direct access, especially when you're doing this day in and day out, more direct access and knowledge of the region, and can quickly find answers for buyers when they're doing their search. The need to have someone who's understanding and savvy is going to be important from the perspective of the seller, because that seller, A, wants to attract more and more buyers, and B, wants the thing to run smoothly, as opposed to a buyer who, let's be honest, most buyers are going to be doing this maybe 3 times in their lifetime, maybe, where we're doing this day in, day out. When you put it all together, you create a much smoother transaction that closes faster.
If you're a buyer, I'd say there's still absolutely value in working with an agent. Perhaps people will do more of what I've been saying all along, is put some effort into who you hire as a buyer's agent. For example, the problem with a solo practitioner is if they're busy with one client or sick or with their family, and now it's time for you to see a home pops up that you want to see. Now you're working around their schedule versus your schedules. So being a real estate agent is a service business. And just like being, a chef, cooking your meals or changing your oil or fixing your engine, these are all things you could learn to do yourself. Certain people, it's worth the time to pay the professional.
So we have discussed a lot today. Overall, do we see these changes as positive or negative?
I'd say overall negative. I do feel like the positive would have been the forced buyer agreements, but still keeping the co-op public in the MLS.
Any other final thoughts?
This whole complaint to the industry came out as a result of transparency. There's a clear need for transparency in all business, in my eyes. We have to continue to give transparency to our clients and give our best service.
I really personally think that most things are going to remain the same, right? So I think that 5 years from now, the way real estate is done is 90% going to look the way it's been done for the last 10 years, except there's going to be small percentage of change, like 10% will change.
Thank you to all of my experts and real estate industry professionals who participated. If you have a story or you want us to hear about your angle about anything we have discussed today, please reach out at info@themortgagenote.org. I'm Nicole Murray. Thanks for listening.